Anthony Albanese appears to have no issue with the growing sense of extravagance and largesse surrounding politicians' taxpayer-funded travel, because he's ruled out changing the rules, despite enormous public outrage over the expenses of Anika Wells and others. Well, here was the Prime Minister today saying that the current system and the current body that oversees it was all fine.
Well, of course, these issues are of genuine concern to the taxpaying public, but we have an independent authority. I'm going to allow them to do their job.
But this isn't quite the full story. Albanese can't claim this is all arm's length from the government, as he did, because it's legislation that governs travel rules. Now, Albanese could easily change the law to have tougher rules. He doesn't want to do this, though, so he pretends he's arm's length from it all when he's not. Now, journalist Rob Harris writes in the Sydney Morning Herald that this saga is dangerously close to becoming Albanese's own "I don't hold a hose" moment, a semantic escape hatch that sounds clever in the moment and foolish in every moment thereafter. And Shadow Finance Minister James Patterson points out that it is firmly in the Prime Minister's remit to act.
So, if the Prime Minister wants to change the rules, he can do so. But at his press conference today, he was full of excuses about how he wasn't the Finance Minister, just as he's been full of excuses all week that he didn't personally book the Minister's flight with the flight agency and therefore he couldn't be responsible, even though he is responsible for approving all international ministerial travel.
It reflects a familiar pattern. I mean, it reminds me of when Albanese claimed his government had nothing to do with the return of ISIS brides. Well, we saw the documents, we saw the truth. But the truth is that Albanese shirks responsibility at every turn and refuses to acknowledge that he's actually the Prime Minister and he does have the authority to change the rules. That is, if he thinks politicians are taking advantage of the system, which clearly they are. And how could Albanese not see that there's an egregious problem after the shocking expenses scandals of the past week? And today's further revelations involving figures like Don Farrell, Sarah Hanson-Young, and even the Prime Minister himself, reportedly booking Labor fundraising events alongside ministerial meetings.
In August, Anthony Albanese held a ministers' meeting an hour before another Labor fundraising event at the Fullerton Hotel. Ministers billed taxpayers almost $14,000 in flights to attend the two events, that according to the AFR this morning. Trade Minister Don Farrell is specifically under scrutiny after flying his family using $90,000 worth of taxpayer funds. And the Communications Minister Anika Wells is also facing continued criticism over her $100,000 New York trip paid by the taxpayer.
This all only reinforces the perception that taxpayer-funded travel is being exploited. And this entire expenses saga has become, in the eyes of most voters, utterly unacceptable. And the Prime Minister isn't doing anything about it. And at the same time, opposition leader Susan Lee isn't putting any pressure on Albanese over this. In fact, she hasn't fronted the media once this week, leaving it up to her colleagues.
On the face of it, if those facts cannot be disputed, then there is a problem, and I don't think it is not just a bad look for anyone, including Senator Hanson-Young, but anyone who would adopt the view that using the resources in the way that's been reported is okay. That is not what the community want, and despite the vagueness of the rules, I don't think that's what was envisaged.
Really, if you can't trust a minister like Anika Wells or Don Farrell to make good decisions about how they spend taxpayers' money within the rules, then how on earth can you trust them to be ministers to make decisions in the national interest?
The opposition is asking Anika Wells to stand down, stand aside from her responsibilities as Communications Minister.
So Susan Lee has not been anywhere near the attack on this. And it's because she's vulnerable on this issue after she lost her job in 2017 when she was caught buying an investment property on the Gold Coast while on a taxpayer-funded trip. Now, there was a level of accountability back then, but under Albanese, there is none. Politicians enjoy a life of privilege, constant free travel, hotel accommodation, chairman's lounge access, chauffeurs and, controversially, taxpayer-funded travel for their spouses to attend concerts, rallies and other events. I mean, the political class lives by an entirely different standard from the people who fund their lifestyle, all of us. And this despicable conduct corrodes public trust and fuels cynicism about politicians. In fact, it simply turns voters off the whole political establishment. And Albanese's refusal to consider any change sends a clear message that he doesn't see a problem worth fixing. As the saying goes, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And right now, Albanese isn't giving this reckless and wasteful conduct a second glance.